Hey there! Before we dive into today's episode, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you're helping us spread the word and connect with more amazing people like you.
Welcome to Pärents, where parent doctors Matthew Letterman and Alona Pulday explore current parenting topics, share stories, and help bring families closer together.
Welcome to Pärents, where we are parent doctors exploring current parenting topics, sharing stories, and helping to bring families closer together. Hi, I'm Dr. Alona Pulday.
And hi, I'm Dr. Matthew Letterman.
Today's overarching topic is what happens when partners don't align on parenting strategies.
But before we dive into today's episode, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. By subscribing, you're helping us spread the word and connect with more amazing people like you. Plus, you'll never miss out on any of our future episodes. Thanks so much for your support.
Headlines and Heartlines.
In Headlines and Heartlines, we play with ideas, answer burning questions, tackle some current events, and find the balance between taking things seriously and keeping a sense of humor. So I have some stories to share around parenting strategies that aren't quite aligned, and what do we do with that? The first one is a bedtime battle where one parent comes from an authoritarian perspective while the other one is seemingly more permissive. This couple actually went viral after the wife, who follows an authoritarian approach, insisted on strict bedtimes for their kids. The husband, who's a more permissive parent, believed in letting the kids stay up late to watch movies together. Their nightly routine became a running joke, with the mom trying to enforce the bedtime rule only for the dad to sneak in with popcorn and a movie selection as soon as she left the room. The kids, of course, were more than happy to join dad's late-night cinema, leaving the mom to playfully complain on social media about being the bad cop while her husband became the kids' hero. Now, here the mom had a sense of humor around it, but sometimes it doesn't quite go that humorously.
When parents do that and they're not on the same page, the dad's almost rebelling by going behind her back and not telling her. So it's a tragic strategy to try and avoid saying, hey, I would like to do it differently and connect around these unmet needs.
And this family was able to keep it, at least in this story context, on a humorous level, but it doesn't always end up that way. And I have two other stories that didn't have such humorous endings. The first is a public meltdown. This story also gained attention on social media and involved a couple who had a public falling out over their differing discipline styles. The child, who was around 4 years old, had a meltdown in a department store, and the mom, who believed in positive parenting, tried to calm the child down by talking through their emotions. The dad, however, was more authoritarian and insisted on physically removing the child from the store as a form of discipline. When the mom resisted asking for patience and understanding, the dad snapped, leading to a heated argument in front of other shoppers. The incident not only embarrassed the couple, but also highlighted the deep divide in their parenting beliefs. Afterward, they struggled to discuss the situation without blame or anger, and the unresolved tension began to spill over into other areas of their relationship, causing further strain.
I think we've all been there where we are attached to our way, and that's when I get that way, I know I'm reactive. So even though you're working it out, there's a part of me that is in so much pain that I just need this to be clear. I need this to matter. I need this to be different. I need to trust that this is going to work out better in the future. How is this kid going to be successful in this world? All that stuff. So it feels very urgent and big. And then we can't even connect because I'm so triggered. And you're trying to connect with the child, all of a sudden now you have two reactive people. You have a reactive child in the child, and then you have a reactive child in me as the dad.
And when we are at that state of reactivity, we are so far in the world of strategies. We are not connecting to the underlying needs, which we talk about regularly, the universal needs there, we probably would even share them if we didn't see eye to eye, right? Which is care about our children, worry about their security, peace of mind that they're going to be okay, consideration for other people in the vicinity, relief. I mean, so many of those things, but we're sharing those needs. One parent has the strategy of, we'll label it for right now, positive parenting. Another parent has an authoritarian power over, and that's where they're not seeing eye to eye.
Both are trying to get to the place where their child shows up as a successful member of society.
Right.
So that's what they're trying to help create that, but in very different ways. And the parent could also say, how cool would it be if the dad could say, I'm so scared when I see my child act this way that they are not going to learn the skills necessary to be successful in this world.
Absolutely. And I think, the other partner would soften into a collaboration there versus a collision on whose way are we going to be doing this. The final story is almost taking that strain of this couple's relationship to the next level, which is the parent who gave up. And this is a really sad story that involved a dad who believed in strict discipline and structure, while the mom was more relaxed and nurturing. Over time, the mom's consistent undermining of the dad's rules led him to feel powerless and frustrated. Every time he tried to enforce a rule or set a boundary, the mom would intervene, often in front of the children, making him feel like the bad guy in the family. Eventually, the dad became so disillusioned that he stopped trying altogether, withdrawing from parenting and spending less time at home. The mom was now left to manage everything on her own, and she became overwhelmed and resentful, which led to constant arguments with her partner. The children, sensing the tension, began to act out more, and the family dynamic became toxic. The dad's disengagement caused a significant rift in the marriage, and the couple eventually separated, unable to reconcile their differences.
So that dad shut down. So he went
completely.
He wanted to get his needs met and didn't see any possibility of that happening. My guess is he wasn't exactly even clear what his needs were to be able to communicate them so that someone else could care about them. But then when he gets hopeless, just shutting down and disconnecting and eventually leaving is the only way for him, in his mind, to get to that place of peace. But it's a very sad way to go.
And is it a place of peace, or is it isolating yourself so much from the pain of a situation? Because initially it was care for the children that led him to even implement what he knew, which was a stricter discipline and structure. And in containing his pain by shutting down and going away, he completely disconnected from the people that he cared about in the first place.
Yes, I don't think it's peace. I think that's a good point. That it's relief, it's acceptance to a certain point, saying, hey, well, I'm not going to get my needs met here, so I'll just try and go over here where those needs don't come up.
Yes, it's an avoidance. You mentioned that earlier. It's an avoidance of pain. And in that avoidance, we numb ourselves out or put ourselves in a container that's not touchable.
The more you do that strategy to isolation and protection, the more you have other needs that go unmet. Family, intimacy, love, support, collaboration.
So much.
So we protect really aggressively with great cost.
This episode of Webe Pärents is brought to you by Webe Calm, the child calmer designed by doctors and loved by parents.
Struggling with bedtime routines or managing your child's anxiety? Webe Calm transforms deep breathing into a fun and engaging activity, helping kids find their inner calm. Perfect for bedtime stressful moments or anytime your child needs a little extra help to stay calm. Visit webecalm.com to learn more and bring tranquility to your family. Webe Calm, because we be in this together.
That leads us into
cheers and tears.
Cheers and tears.
Today's cheers and tears comes from somebody in our audience who wrote in about how to connect to their daughter while also connecting with their partner who doesn't align on the parenting strategies. Now, this child is neurodivergent and struggles with regulation and impulse control. And one parent's approach is really through collaborative, positive parenting, talking through emotions, getting to feelings and needs, coming up with strategies. The other parent feels strongly that structure and discipline need to be through a more authoritarian approach, and that when the child is approached through a collaborative effort, the child manipulates a situation or takes advantage or really tests the boundaries.
So each parent has needs that aren't being met through the other parent's strategies.
Yes.
So if we can get clear on what needs aren't being met, then we can get clearer on strategies that can meet all of the needs. And I think the term, the labels, right? We talk about that in nonviolent communication. There's lots of labels. And labels are a shorthand to sort of agree on this, this means something, whatever that label is. But sometimes labels can be disconnecting too. So something like the word positive parenting, that means different things, different people, that label. But for people that don't fall in that category, they quickly can say, well, what does that mean? I do negative parenting? And that can lead to disconnection. Instead of saying, hey, I really value hearing kids out and collaborating with them to try and find a solution that works for everybody. So now we can agree, you and me can agree to say, when we say positive parenting, that's what we mean. But if we're not careful, it can be very disconnecting just using the label. So it's got to be a very clear agreement between me and you or whoever you're using that label with. So I want to point that out, that if our goal is to connect and have parents restore connection around this, one is let's be really careful about the labels versus what are the values underneath the labels, because we're probably going to get together and share a lot more around the underlying values.
I love that. And I think that will lead us into our topic and tool, just to share that this currently lives as a tier because the parents don't know quite how to figure it out while both wanting to support their child. But
so it's a tier because there's this disconnection between the parents, and they want to be connected, they want to be aligned, and they're struggling to find a path towards that.
That's one piece. And then the other piece is the disconnection with the child and actually seeing a result from either parenting strategy that is increasing the connection with their child.
So the child isn't resonating with either strategy?
There isn't a consistent strategy. And I think I'd like to actually bring that into our topic and tool and talk about what happens. But the short answer to your question is, I think that there isn't a trust. The child has known, often authoritarian will trump permissive, right? Because it's louder, it's bigger. So if you're used to a more authoritarian structure, then really the child's only course of action is to submit or rebel. And this particular child is spirited and chooses to rebel. And because there's not a trust, so even when it's a positive parenting approach that now is being tried, there's no trust that there isn't attachment to outcome by the parents, that it's not another way or a nice way to control the child. Mm. Let's take that into our topic and tool for today.
Topics and tools.
In topic and tool, we dive into a key parenting issue, examining its significance and the challenges it presents. We'll then equip you with a practical tool to effectively address this in your everyday life. So let's get started. So we're bringing in our cheer and tier into the topic of today, which is what happens when partners are not aligned on parenting strategies. I was just kind of bringing up, that there's a number of dynamics that are happening. There's partners who aren't aligned, and then there are children who are getting very mixed messages around how they're being approached. And so there's, to some degree or to a great degree, a breach of trust by the children. I think it's really important to remember that especially younger children that don't yet have agency around taking care of themselves or don't have the capability or capacity to do that, are left with two options. They can submit, and submission looks like suppression and repression of their own needs, obedience to parents, or they can rebel and they can tantrum and they can melt down. They can give parents a run for their money. So what do we do in those situations? How do we, one, take care of the child and our connection to the child? And then how do we also hold the partner dynamic and care for that as well?
So are you saying when the parent feels very strongly about the way he or she is approaching the child, and then also cares very much about the partner and the relationship there, but there's dissonance between all of it?
Correct.
And what does that parent do?
What do the parents do? How do they support each other? How do they align on an approach? Do they need to align on an approach?
I think that goes back to sort of the fundamentals of nonviolent communication, which is the connection dance that we talk about. Mm-hmm. There's empathy for me, myself. I check in what's going on in my heart. When I am soft in my heart, then I can check what's going on in your heart. That's empathy for the other person. And then when both of our hearts are soft, there's a connection energy between us. Then we can look at what we want to do, what we want to do to meet needs, as far as, I have this need coming up, and this is what I'm thinking of doing. I have this need with the child, and I'm thinking of doing this with the child. And they say, I have this need, and I'd like to do this thing with the child. And then you say, okay, what need of mine isn't met when the other person deals with the child in the way they do? But we can't even get to that until we really establish the connection between me and you. When we talk to parents, when we work with them as clients, there's so much pain and broken trust that their hearts are not soft. They are not in a collaborative energy. So trying to do this collaborative parenting doesn't work very well.
I think they also often mistake strategies for needs. So somebody coming from an authoritarian background or raised in that environment grows to believe that you need to obey. Obedience is not a need. Obedience is a strategy to meet needs for consideration, needs for care, needs for respect, needs for mattering. But obedience is one strategy to meet that need. Now, if you are attached to that, to being the need, and that is what you're trying to get your child to do, to obey you, then there's already a disconnection.
Right. So that's where the connection happens is, now that I'm soft and I'm really trying to understand my partner. Because if I think my partner is this terrible parent, I can't do this. But let's assume I've gotten soft and I'm really curious and open and trying to see my partner's beautiful needs. I'm going to explore their desire for obedience. I'm going to say, so when you want the child to obey, is it you're really wanting respect? And they'll say yes or no. And they're not only respect, but I'm also wanting consideration. I want respect as the parent. And I have this belief that a good parent has children that fall in line and do everything they say. And I'll say, okay, so for you, your competence as a parent is also coming up. So when a child obeys, not only does it meet needs for respect, but also competence. I'll say, okay, so it makes sense that you really want obedience. So I'm really getting to the point where I can see why they're so attached to obedience. And then also, if a child doesn't obey and they do whatever they want, do you get scared that they're going to do something that's dangerous and they could hurt themselves or some bad outcome? Yeah. So safety and security also. If a child, especially as they're younger, doesn't listen, something horrible can happen. So it's really scary for you too.
And trust, right? When you see obedience as the only strategy to trust that you're going to matter, there's not that benefit of the doubt that we naturally want to contribute and gift to one another. We naturally want to care for one another. And if the only way to achieve that care is to get somebody to do what you want them to do.
And it's an illusion too, right? Because if you're doing what I want and I'm using obedience to meet my need for care, are you really caring about me? No, you're caring about yourself getting punished or scared. So even though you think you're meeting a need for care, you're not.
Yes, I love that point, and I think it's so important is, why are my children doing what they're doing? Is it because I'm telling them to and they're afraid of the consequences of not listening to me? Or are they doing it because they really want to contribute and they see opportunities to do that?
Exactly. I want kids, my goal is for them to connect to their own values for care and consideration and respect of other people, their parents included. And I want to treat them with respect, and I want them to show up in this world and make choices that meet their needs. And I really hope that care for me falls under their needs.
Care for you, care for others. It brought up right now, I was just reminded of a conversation that I had with Jordan just yesterday when she loves her fifth grade teacher, loves her fifth grade teacher. But she came into the car and she said, my teacher was giving me the signal of closing my mouth. And I said, oh, why was she doing that? Because I was talking to friends at quiet time. I just have too many friends, Mama. We're always, even when I'm not talking, they're talking to me. What am I going to do? I answer back. And initially I was like, Jordan, when your teacher asks you to zip it, zip it.
Or at least have the courtesy to raise your hand and say, I want to keep talking. Can we work this out?
Yes.
Now, the teacher might not be willing to talk about it right then, but at least then you're not sort of pretending to go along, but then you're really not. You're rebelling.
Right. And that was my inclination, was to tell her, hey, just zip it when she says zip it. And I joked about it. I said, ooh, I forecast in our future that Dad and I are going to be at a parent-teacher conference sometime soon. And she started laughing. But then I was like, hey, I know how much you love this teacher. And I'm guessing that you really care about her as well. And what do you think when she's asking you to stop talking in the midst of quiet time? What is she really needing? Respect, care, mattering, all of those needs Jordan came up with very quickly. And I said, and how do you feel connecting to the fact that when you're talking during quiet time, you're not meeting any of those needs? And all of a sudden, she connected to it in a different way, which is, I'm not really caring for this person that I truly care about by showing up in this way. And I have a desire to contribute to her. And I think that that's where we get hung up sometimes, is we don't believe that our natural state is that one, the one that Jordan connected to, which is, of course, I care about her. And when I see my strategies or my behaviors as not contributing to those needs, it makes me want to show up differently.
And parents who start the authoritarian pathway and then they work their way over, they say, oh, I'd really like to try this collaborative, non-permissive pathway. You have some extinction bursts to work with, right? You have some trust.
Absolutely.
You have some trust to rebuild. So you might have this belief that they don't care about you and they're going to just, if you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. And they might at first, because if they're under the mindset of take what I can, because everything's a fight with my parents. If I want my needs met, I got to meet them myself. And nobody cares about my needs. They just care about their own needs.
Even when they say they care, they're just pretending to care to get me to do what they want.
So if that's the belief system, we got to shift that belief system. That takes some work. It takes a little bit of patience and nerve to be able to endure that relearning process.
And I think humility as parents, we contributed to that on some sense because that is how we've been parenting up to date. We have been demanding obedience. We have been attached to outcomes. And even when we say it nicely, we say it nicely, but do as I say. And so for children not to trust that you're coming with a desire to truly collaborate with them is understandable.
It's almost like the chicken and the egg, right? Or it's circular, because someone needs to be the person to say, okay, we're going to stop this dynamic. I have to be authoritarian because they only care about themselves, and I got to force them to do the right thing because they won't do it on their own. And if you stop as the parent, you've got to endure a child that's still sort of going in that paradigm, right? Or the child could start caring, and then you all of a sudden don't have to do the authoritarian, right? So we could work with the child, or we could work with the parent, but it works best if everybody does it together.
I agree with that. And at the same time, I think that there is value in the parents spending a little bit of time aligning around needs. In this situation where you have one parent who's coming from an authoritarian approach, who doesn't trust that without obedience, they're going to see the outcomes that they desire, and you have a parent who's trying to do it a different way, if there can be a little bit of time spent nurturing their connection and their relationship so that at baseline there's a trust among these partners that their goal in connecting to their child is to meet each other's needs too.
Yeah, I think that's essential. And when I say working with the child to care, it's not about getting the child to do what the dad says. The child is only going to care for the parents if they trust their space to hear everybody's needs. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the parent, again, is thinking obedience, and care means you're going to care about the same things I care about. You're going to do the same things I want to do. And that's not how it works. In fact, we really don't want obedient children. When they're older, do we want them to obey? It's, oh, look at that, great. My children are great. They listen to everything all their friends tell them to do. They're so obedient. We don't want that. We want them to think for themselves. So they've gone from an obedient paradigm, and then all of a sudden they get out in the real world and they're like, well, who do I listen to? Versus, no, connect to your internal values and let that be your guide. We can't help the child do that if we don't create an environment, a household, where that's the way forward. And we start modeling that in the way you just said, which is between the parents. So when the parents have a disagreement around this, how do we connect around needs? And that exercise is not only going to help your relationship, it's going to help you practice so that you can show up that way with your child when you're not on the same page with them.
I love that. And I want to take that into our next section and get specific around an example. We'll talk about no skills to pro skills.
No skills to pro skills.
In No Skills to Pro Skills, we highlight key aspects of addressing issues with and then without connection skills. And so I want to bring back that whole notion that you were just kind of sharing, that skill around introducing the intention for collaboration, caring for each other's needs, getting to needs before addressing strategies. And how do we do that? And so bringing back the example from our cheers and tears, we have that child with the impulse control who's melting down. We have a father who has a natural tendency to want to go authoritarian, to get this child to obey and behave, to immediately stop whatever their behavior is and be the good kid. And then we have a mother who wants to, in that moment of impulsivity or dysregulation, connect with what is happening with this child. What is going on, and then how do we go from there?
So there's a lot to unpack here.
Yes.
And the first thing is to do this not in the heat of the moment. So in the heat of the moment, it's hard to do all of this, but to do some proactive work with the dad and saying, hey, what needs of yours are coming up when you see the child like that? And then when you want it to stop immediately, what needs of yours are coming up? Let's care about those needs. Even if I don't like the way you're trying to meet those needs, let's care about them. And the connection happens when we can care about them. And that's what I would want the dad to get clear on them so he can express them to the mom. And then I want the mom to be able to hear them. In addition, the mom can talk about what needs of hers are met by hearing the child out or spending a little time or doing whatever she's doing when she calls it positive discipline, let's say, and get clear on what those needs are. And then you have time to be able to say, okay, what needs are not met when my partner does it with the obedience paradigm and I do it with this hearing them out paradigm. So that's, to me, is the first step is, can we get clear on the needs? And we can actually practice that if you want.
Yeah, I think it would be good to, and I think it's kind of what you said. In the heat of a moment is probably not the time to bring in this conversation. The intention around doing it differently is a conversation to be had when there's regulation, time, resourcing, and people are feeling open to connecting around.
Right, there's goodwill.
Right.
Because my guess is the dad knows that mom doesn't like his style. So he's already going to harden. And in order to sort of feel grounded in his style, he's going to have to, have sort of blame, enemy image energy towards mom. Oh, I got to do it my way because the way she does it is ineffective. And she's not going to like the way I do it. So I'm going to have to just ignore her because she doesn't know what she's doing. Right. So if you have that, you're already disconnecting, just preparing yourself to be able to employ the strategies that you think are meeting all of your needs.
Right.
And the mom has the same images of dad.
Right.
Here he goes again. He's going to lose it. And why can't he be kinder and nicer and more respectful and caring and collaborative with the child?
And it's not about obedience. And
right. So,
yes.
So we want to get them outside of that scenario and play that scenario out in isolation and then practice it before they ever get to the store again. And then we want to sort of have time to practice in the store.
I love that. And I think I would actually take even a step way farther back, which I didn't think of as we first started the conversation, but really it's first an agreement among partners that the way things are going isn't working for anybody. And that's not to say who's right, who's wrong, which approach are we actually going to take, which one are we going to discard. It's what we're doing right now isn't working, and let's explore something different. Okay, so if that's the initial agreement, then we step into, what you just shared, which is how do we now align? Let's get to the needs. And if we play it out, you play dad thinking of his daughter's meltdown at the department store.
Yeah, and sometimes it's helpful actually to reverse the roles. So I'll have the mom play the dad and the dad play the mom so you can get into their shoes. So there's lots of ways to play with this, with the goal being, let's understand each other's perspectives, understand their experience, understand what's going on in their hearts. And that's what we're going to try and do right now. So when I'm the dad and I see my son on the floor having a fit, I might initially be like, oh, here we go again. And I always start with the critic or the inner voice it's judging, and don't try and translate that. Just sort of go with it because that'll help you get clear on the needs. So here we go again. My child is losing it. I can't believe it. He's this old and he's still having these fits. Or when is he going to learn? And why is he being so unreasonable? Shouldn't be that difficult. And, the way mom is parenting him is just terrible. And I need to lay down the law because otherwise he's going to be doing this when he's in college. And it's going to be embarrassing and a mess. I don't even know if he's going to have a job.
And that's all the self-talk that's happening.
Right.
What are the needs underlying that, if you were to take a guess?
Well, I'm going on and on because I think that by doing that, it sort of starts to disarm because you almost see the catastrophizing, right? Which makes it easier to sort of, okay, let's calm down. This is not really an emergency here, right? We don't have to move fast. And then the needs are, okay, I'm seeing that. First, I felt there was urgency. There was almost we got to nip this in the butt. And it's like, no. He could have a conniption right there and I could walk away. Okay, now I got the quiet and the peace that I need, at least in that moment, some relief in that moment. And then, okay, I really want him to express himself differently. When he's upset, I'd like him to have control over his body, control over his emotions, express himself with words. I'd really like him to just show up differently and have a sense that, he's growing up in a healthy, emotionally healthy way. I want to make sure, so to me, it's almost like health and well-being and some ability to regulate and self-control. And then there's sort of, oh my God, there's all these people staring at me, right? So you see how my concerns lead me to the needs? Okay, so I'm worried about sort of fitting in and acceptance. And then it's, people are trying to read and do their other stuff, also consideration for other people. So all of these needs are coming up as I'm imagining this child on the floor. And then to me, the biggest one as a parent is peace of mind that they're going to be okay. The child is going to be okay. They're going to be a successful member of society. And when I see a kid losing it on the floor, I worry that they're not going to be a successful member of society. And I'm failing this child as a father. And so competence as a father is coming up too.
Yeah, so you're holding all of those needs and they're hidden underneath a whole lot of judgments, criticisms, and blames for how this child is behaving at a given time and what that impact means for you and for them long term. And, when you started with all of the judgments, it's so easy to see how a partner could get defensive around that. Versus when you started connecting that to what needs are not met, there's a shared reality. Oh, maybe I don't care so much what other people think of me in the department store, but I can get connected to the need underlying that, right? And I might share that. And my guess is for this mom, there are similar needs for peace of mind, similar needs for relief, similar needs for care, contribution to their child, competence as a parent, all of that. And their particular strategy is connecting through curiosity, through learning more, through discovering more.
And sometimes it's helpful. I'll have parents write down all the things they're worried about when they see a child having a fit on the floor. And it's very helpful for dad to write his list and mom to write her list so that you can now see, okay, this is what they're worried about. And just showing up and saying, I'm really worried and scared when I see my child do this. So, because that's underneath the anger and frustration. On the surface is anger and frustration, but underneath is like, what is wrong with my child? Why are they doing this? Why can't they, right? So that language is really around worry, anxiety, fear. Which
I would say probably both partners or parents have at any given moment, regardless of what strategy they choose to implement. And so connecting around that, hey, we're both scared. We're both frightened. We're both really needing reassurance that our child's going to be okay. We're needing that peace of mind. Ooh, how you soften into that connection around shared reality around the needs. And if you can get to there, then it's, okay, what do we do from here? Now, authoritarian is one strategy. Permissive is another strategy. Coming from curiosity and collaboration is another. These are all strategies that then we can talk about and hopefully find some alignment.
Yeah, really aligning on the needs. And the parents, when you share your fears and you start going to the heart, so the head is where the anger is living and the judgment about what's wrong. But then you can go inside your own heart and say, here's what I'm actually worried about. Mm-hmm. And hearing what the other parent's worried about. Mm-hmm. And then from there, that's where you can connect to the needs. And then when you share the needs with each other, like you said, there's a lot of overlap.
Absolutely.
And then from there, okay, well, what should we do? But don't go to what we should do until you can see all of the good reasons your partner parents the way they parent or wants to parent the way they do. And if you can't see the good reasons why dad wants to be authoritarian, or dad can't see the good reasons why mom wants to do it with more collaboration, then you're not ready to strategize.
And the goal behind that is really just trying to understand your partner, understand the motivations behind their strategies, not get attached to the strategy. Just because you can connect to the quote unquote good reason for an authoritarian approach doesn't mean you condone an authoritarian approach, nor is that the one that you're going to take with your child moving forward.
And that's where I want to differentiate. When I say the word good reason, it's the needs that they're meeting.
Yes. What are the needs that they're meeting? And so I love that. And I think to sum up the pro skills and no skills, when we're coming from disconnection, we're stuck on that strategy space. How do we get what we want to allay our own worries, our own needs?
And we're very much in the right or wrong. There's a right way to parent and a wrong way. I know what that is, and I am the judge on when other people are doing it the wrong way.
Right. And coming into these situations with that attachment will always lead to disconnection. Coming from a place of, hey, you know what we're doing right now, regardless, it's not working. So in order for us to maintain any kind of meaningful connection between us and with our children, we got to find another way. So let's talk about this other way. And even that intention, even setting up that space, soften hearts to allow for more expansion, to allow for hearing one another. And I love the intention around, I really want to hear what is underlying your strategies. What's underneath? What's the layer underneath that? What are the needs that you're trying to meet?
And if people aren't clear on needs, they can go to webeparents.com and get a list of needs. And they make that we have those for parents, we have adults, we have those for kids. But you learn those needs words so you can start communicating from that paradigm, and it's going to really start to shift the energy in the relationship and in the whole house.
Right. There's a natural connection that happens when you start naming needs because they're universal. We share them, whether we're consciously aware of sharing them. And then once we understand, we're both trying to meet needs for protection and care. We're both trying to meet needs for peace of mind and respect. We're just choosing to do it in different ways. Okay, well now let's see if we can align on a way that works for both of us. And how expansive and wonderful that feels. And once we have that intention, sharing that with the family. And that leads us right into our next section, which is bringing it home.
Bringing it home.
You got to get over that distrust that is going to be seated in your children if you have taken an authoritarian approach all of their lives. They are going to see your efforts as just another way to control them. And so there has to be opportunities, like you said, I love that word extinction burst, to allow for these extinction bursts, to allow for them to act out despite your intent, your naming your intention, and for you to have space to say, okay, they're challenging right now because they don't trust that I really want to collaborate with them.
And that's the name of the game. It doesn't mean you go along with what they're wanting. That would be permissive if it doesn't meet your needs. But you also can stay grounded and let them have their experience. And say, okay, so you don't have trust yet. I get that. So letting the family, part of bringing it home, is making it clear that we are going to shift the paradigm in this house because I think it's going to feel better for everybody who's in. And it starts with the parents. How are we going to connect around this different approach to parenting? And then, let's not start that out with the tantrum. And how are we going to handle the tantrum going forward? Let's be proactive around navigating what we're going to do. And then we're going to bring the kid in and say, hey, how can we navigate when you go so upset that you lose control of your body on the floor? And how do we navigate that? But it has to start with empathy for the child. I bet you're pretty upset. My guess is it doesn't feel good to fall on the floor and shake around and scream like that. But you're so upset, it's really hard to control that. And then there's connection with the child. It doesn't mean when you're empathizing that you're okay with it. Right? But there's no time right now when you're empathizing with the child to share about how it feels for you. You do that later in the conversation. But the whole family can connect. So I think this is really cool to bring it home around this topic and say, hey, I want to handle those moments in the store where you get so upset differently. I want to handle it differently inside myself. I want to handle it differently between me and mom. And I want to handle it differently between me and you and us and you, so that we can all come together in a collaborative way, but in a way that works for all of us. Because I guess is if the child said, hey, I just want to scream and blow off steam and shake my body around for a couple of minutes in my room, anybody have an objection to that? Because I'm going to let off at all this energy. And then once I do that, I can think more clearly and I can have a really collaborative conversation. But I need like 3 minutes to just shake and scream. My guess is in that moment, people would say, well, that sounds like a great idea. Go shake and scream. Once you get all that out, let's go and we'll talk and we'll sit down. So the idea is to come together and not demonize the shaking and screaming, but also say, okay, well, in this moment, in this way, here's what need of mine is not met. When this happens, here's what need of mom's isn't met. And when this happens, here's what need of yours isn't met, right? So we're going around and we're working, and until we identify all that and figure out a way to better meet them, let's just stay in the dialogue.
I love that. And I love that you, again, aren't taking anything away from the child, but kind of giving them perspective on maybe more, for lack of a better word, appropriate opportunities to have those extinction bursts. Like, yes, you can have an extinction burst if you must in the parking lot, but, not in the department store, for example. And there's that mattering about their autonomy and what they're actually feeling in their body. Parents will see less and less of the dysregulation getting to that escalated level where it is a meltdown or it is a tantrum, because you're going to catch it, in theory, earlier.
Right. We ideally are attuning with the child and giving the child skills where they can tell you, or you can read, depending on how old they are, hey, I'm so hungry and tired and under-resourced that in a couple of minutes, I'm probably going to lose my basket. What should we do? Right? And be prepared to strategize. But to come, even saying, like, it's okay to scream and shake, but not in the department store, is to say that to yourself first. Hey, let's explore what's going on. And I am not okay with them screaming like that in a department store. But I am going to trust that we're going to find a solution that does not include that. But if I tell them, you can't scream in an apartment store, if that's how I lead, or that's my goal, is getting them to agree with that, then it's going to affect the connection. I think that's hard for people when I work with them to realize that even though I'm not going to move forward where they're screaming in a department store, if I lead with, you are not allowed to scream in a department store, or I'm not okay with you doing that.
Well, it undermines that whole effort to be collaborative. You're still authoritarian, just in a nicer way. Like, yeah, you can tantrum, but you're not going to do it here.
Right. So what I'll say is, here's what my concerns are. There's all these people looking around and it's disruptive to them. It's I started feeling embarrassed, when I'm seeing that, and I have this sense, there's this judge in my head that's saying a good dad doesn't have a child that does that. So I can't figure out a way to get comfortable with you just screaming in a department store. And then I'm not trying to get them to agree with me. I want to see, hey, can you tell me back what you're hearing is going on for me, right? And if they can't dialogue, obviously it's different. I'll modify what we do for children that can't speak to you in this way. But a lot of kids, even when they're young, they can understand that. And then we can say, okay, can we think of a way, once I understand what their needs are, where you can express yourself when you're really frustrated and tired? What can we do so that it happens in a way that doesn't disrupt everybody else and it doesn't stimulate embarrassment for me? Can we try and figure that out? Let's work together and put our heads together there. And then the kid is now working together with you to try and find a way to express energy and emotion with that.
Yes.
In a way that works for you.
I love that. So really connecting to your needs and then committing to collaborating on a strategy that works for both of you and modeling that in ways that like are not in the moment of a heated event. So really anticipating or practicing or pretending around a situation.
Yep,
Acting out a situation.
Act out. Have the child play you as the parent and you on the floor screaming and saying, hey, you're dad now. How can we do it in a way that works for you and me? So you reverse role play the situation in your house.
I love that reverse role play because it gives children an opportunity to really gain perspective and parents to gain perspective.
Yeah.
You know, when you're on the floor pretending to be so upset, all of a sudden you see through your child's eyes in a way that you can't when you're standing there trying to extinguish that meltdown.
Right. And you can even practice it. Say, hey, all day today, whenever I fall on the floor, you say this to your kid, I want you to jump into the role as dad and show me how to handle it because you have really good ideas. So randomly throughout the day, drop on the floor, have a temper tantrum, and now say, hey, hey, son, why don't you come over here and you're dad now, remember? What do we do? And then you're going to learn through your child, and then that is helping the child also get clear on what works for him, and it's a really fun way to do it. And then when you're done, you celebrate. Oh, that was a great idea. Now I know what to do. And then you practice it again later and fall on the floor again and have a tantrum another time.
I love it. So the moral of the story is parents hit the floor with tantrums and let your children practice.
So the problem is that parents are not having enough tantrums themselves.
Yes.
To help out with it. Yes.
Oh, that's your favorite fire drill.
I love the fire drills.
Yes.
I'm telling you, that's how we have incorporated so many skills.
Practice makes perfect. Yes, there's something that is embedded in us. When we hear that fire alarm go off, we know what to do. And this is the same thing. When they are practicing, when it happens in a real situation, it's very clear what to do in a way that works for everyone.
Just one last thing.
For every minute of obedience, we lose 60 seconds of connection to our values. Remember that you want your kids to choose behaviors that are aligned with their own intrinsic values, that maintain their agency and empowerment, and don't rob them of their power because they're obeying you or later in life obeying others.
Wonderful. I love it. So we'd love to hear from you. Please email us at parents@webetogether.com with your own cheers and tears, as well as any questions or stories you'd like to share. Your experiences and feedback are invaluable to us. So thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you next time.
Thanks for listening to the We Be Parents podcast. To hear what else Doctors Matt and Alona are up to, visit us at webeparents.com. Remember to try something you learned today. It just might be the first step in a new relationship with your kid.